Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Well Within. I am so honored to be sitting here today with the incredible Zoë Pawlak. You cannot go into a home in Vancouver or a space of, I don't want to even say importance, but like you're everywhere. Your art is everywhere. You really are woven into the DNA of the art culture in Vancouver, but really worldwide. And so it's such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, really. We're excited. We're both excited.
There are so many things that I want to talk to you about today, including your creative process, your sobriety, your like all the different avenues that you've taken your art as far as like actually being a businesswoman as well. But I always love to hear a little bit of the before story before we dive into all of this. So can you just tell me a little bit about where you came from and what your life was like growing up?
Yeah, thanks. I was raised in a suburb of Vancouver and I played a lot of sports as a young child. And I had an injury around 14 that kind of changed the direction of my life. And I ended up living in South America when I was in ninth grade. And then when I returned, I wanted to go to a fine arts high school. So I had really rigorous teachers who I had a traditional training really in high realism, which is very rare. A lot of art schools don't value rigorous sort of study and a tenacity for like realism and specifically high levels of training in that sense, and are more conceptual. And then I went on to study in Montreal, Halifax, and Mexico for post-secondary, had my children really young, and moved to Montreal, got sober there 9 years ago, and then have been living back home for the last 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And been a professional painter for 19 years, coming up on 20 years.
Your work has been featured in so many publications. Obviously, lots of fancy people have your work in their homes. Tell us a little bit about why you think it is that your art stands out from other artists.
I mean, I think it's a long game to be an artist. There's sort of two things that come to mind. I think right now there's this mythology around being an artist that you can earn a living really quickly, and that you can, even before the real rise of social media and having a really flashy online presence, there was this mythology around the young artist kind of making it in, let's say, Miami or at Art Basel.
Yes.
And kind of, winning at this game. And one of my early mentors said, this is a long game. It's a long life, and you want to have a long arc in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of that is that I believe it's a vocation. So like being a rabbi or like being a yoga teacher or a teacher, even, it's a real calling. And not every profession is a calling. And so I think that I have a sincerity with which I meet the importance of the work that I'm doing, but I have zero ego because I feel like I'm a vessel for the work. And I also have no expectation of it happening quickly. And I've been in it for a long time. More functionally, my clients say that my work gives energy and provides calm. And I think it's very rare to have work live in your home or office or wherever that has a lot of energy in it and also provides that sense of calming relief. A lot of my clients work really hard, and I've always been really committed to them having a place where they can rest their eyes and their psyche, their soul. And I think that's part of why I've had success.
I love what you just said about really leaning into the knowing that there's a long game here and that it doesn't happen overnight. Even just the exhale that feels like in my body, hearing that in a world where we're just kind of constantly chasing these quick fixes and these little dopamine hits, and everybody wants the success now. What a gift to, from the very beginning of your career, had this longer outlook that it doesn't have to happen overnight, that this is more of an unfolding.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And it gives everyone listening as well permission, as you're building out or designing or creating your dream life, that it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And that we have this long life for a reason.
Yeah.
Everything can unfold piece by piece as it's meant to. What does your creative process look like?
There's a few ways to answer that. So for context for your listeners, I've done over 700 custom commissions. So a lot of my work is custom work, meaning that it's sort of agreed upon that I will make a certain type of work for people. And that's a really different process than making just whatever I want. And so about 50% of my income comes from custom work and 50% comes from just making work that I felt in the moment and that then people go on to collect. So I carry what's called an inventory. So we have racks of stuff and that's important because they're two really different processes. And so I won't talk so much about the commission process, but the creative process when it's my own work always begins with writing, language, feeling. And I really believe that I am a conduit for my clients, and just viewers' capacity to feel. Like it's like I open that range of feeling. And whatever I give myself permission to express gives the viewer the capacity and the space to feel the same types of things or range of emotional sort of experiences. And so if you think about like a song, if a singer is really willing to go there and sing like this big juicy ballad, you yourself at the concert or as listening in your car, you really get to go there too. Yeah. And so I think of my work as this expansive, expressive field, and on behalf of sort of the culture and the consumer and the listener or the viewer, I really get to go there, So that process is a lot of listening to music, a lot of looking at colors, a lot of looking at nature, moving my body, nourishing myself so that I can be a conduit for the best work possible.
All of this that she just mentioned is the well within work. It is how we tap into our inner world, and then your profound ability to express that in an outward way that other people can relate to and can view and can feel is really extraordinary.
We've long had an understanding that, for example, an athlete's work moves through their body. We would admit that a dancer's work moves through their body and that they would be better off being well, that they would better off stretching and being hydrated. And yet the mythology around the artist is that they are to suffer. And a big part of my work, being in the world, is countering that through being well. And that's been a big part of my sobriety and my commitment to respecting this. I always call it, it's like this one RV that we get to drive around in, this body, respecting that enough. And its relationship to how to move the best work possible through the world.
I've got goosebumps listening to this. One thing you just said that I want to circle back on is the mythology around the artist is that the artist is to suffer, right? The suffering artist doesn't make any money. Like there's a darkness, their pain is what even Taylor Swift said this recently, that she was worried at one point if she got too happy, if the relationships that she was in turned good, would she still have art within her? And I think about the other areas of our life where there are certain buckets that we put ourselves in, and there's a mythology around how that person should be. Like the mother should be giving wholly herself to her children, her husband, her family, and that becomes her sole purpose. The entrepreneur, it's like the hustle, the grind, the wellness guru is up at 5 a.m. going through 17-step morning routines. And I wonder with all of these different buckets that we can put ourselves in, where they may help us, but where they may also harm us, and whether there's room to break free to create a little bit more freedom and wellness within.
What I'm always interested in is kind of going back a step behind that, and we would say, well, who decided this? Who decided this is a really important question. Who decided that we would be pushing this hard? Who does this benefit? Whose pace is this? Who chose this cadence? Why am I rushing? Literally, why am I rushing here? And so going back and wondering who was most interested in that, it's usually that, for example, if you take the rushing entrepreneur, capitalism best benefits. If we're exhausted and we're tired, the medical system wins what? We can really, it doesn't take long to figure out.
You don't have to be a genius. You really only have to go one layer deeper.
What the exciting part about that is that once we decide, if there's a joystick in the center of us that's sort of being driven, like that this car is being driven by someone else's motivations or long lineages of stories around whatever, for example, that the mother should be. Once we identify that and we say, oh, I want to make a new way, then we can just start creating. And so I think one of the things that I find the most exciting about being an entrepreneur, specifically a female young Canadian entrepreneur, is that there's not a lot of women who've gone before me in my field. And when I meet it with that kind of freshness, it's really exciting because I've not only made creative products as a creative, people are like, you have such a creative career. But what I find most exciting inside of the studio, and with having had a staff at times over the last sort of 12 years, is the inside of our world, we're constantly creating a totally new type of career that's never really existed before. And we're doing that on behalf of Canadian culture so that young people can understand it and better see themselves in that potential. And so that women can, and mothers and whoever, right, can sort of, they're like permission slips, right, that they get handed when they see you doing something that's innovative or new. You're an artist, but you also do this. It's like, yes. And so I find that part so exciting.
Do you think everyone has creativity within them? Or are there some people who are just far more creative and other people who are meant to be doing like the spreadsheets and the math?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a range, right? But I think that what I'm really enjoying seeing right now, I think people like Rick Rubin's book and Rick Rubin in general and other sort of innovative speakers are bringing forward Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Like, it's like we are all able to make love in more creative ways or make more exciting stuff in the kitchen and, even throw on interesting wild vintage clothes. Like the expression of ourselves really matters. And I think the opposite of depression is expression. Because I think one of the questions people ask around that is, does creativity matter? It doesn't really sound, it's sort of as a superficial second to surviving, we will also be creative, as like a sort of fluffy thing that's sort of after what? The living of a big, wild, messy life that includes making meals, making love, dressing interestingly, whatever. And now is a good time to express oneself as a counter to any sort of repression or depression that we might be experiencing.
I've never heard that before, that expression, creativity is a counter to depression. Can you talk at all about how that's impacted your own life or shown up in your own life?
For sure, yeah. In some ways, there's a time for resting and there's a time for rising. And I've experienced depression on and off my whole life. And lowercase d, capital D, depression. Yeah. And we all have to various degrees during periods of grief, or we've been close to it through family members or friends. When we're really down, we need to respect that. And so we're not to stay in self-pity and we're not to stay in like too low for too long. But in the last couple of years, I've really allowed myself to touch the bottom. I call it touching the bottom of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Like not just going halfway down and just kind of like, oh yeah, I was a little sad today, but like, and then again, it has this pace to it that's like, dip out of it as quickly as possible. If you really are willing to go through the depth of the darkness and face the feeling and face the fear, and I mean head on, actually is, spoiler alert, it can not in a racing through kind of a way, but it can actually be faster to just, when you're jumping in the waves and you see a big one coming up, the best way through is through. We know this now. I think as we get older, it's like, I want to feel every range of experience. And if I stay in the shallows of my sadness and sort of blame other people and don't take radical responsibility and don't really like dive into the cold plunge and really have those hard conversations, then they're little acts of deflection. And in those we build resentments, and we just maintain and sustain our unhappiness because we're possibly uncomfortable with how big the feeling might be. But the feeling's not going to kill you. And there's a lot of freedom available on the other side. And so I know at times when I've been in my darkest moments, I haven't been able to create. And that's also okay too. I've had to take time to just nurture this small ember within and not rush things. But when and if I have been able to just even dance around my living room or something, again, as an act of creation, it's saying, yes, I will allow some joy to come through me just for now. And maybe sometimes that's all I can handle. But it's not from a place of forcing things. So this last couple of years has been a real case of, am I staying in this too long? Or am I really honoring my grief and not rushing out of things because I'm uncomfortable?
It's beautiful. And I can completely relate to being at the bottom of the pool. And when you're in that space, it's hard to create. It's hard to make yourself dance in the living room, right? Like everything feels heavy or everything feels anxiety provoking and your thoughts may be spiraling, however it's happening for you. I found for me personally as well, another thing that helped was just listening to podcasts and shows that were really helpful and healing words to replace the thoughts in my own mind. And then also I would go around our neighborhood and pick up garbage with kitchen tongs that Scott quickly was like, those are no longer our kitchen tongs. But there was something about being in service that did not fix everything overnight, but just took the edge off a little bit. I felt some level of satisfaction. And I think sometimes when we talk about the work and inner work, that is one very important aspect of it. It's what this whole show is about. But we also can't forget the being in service part and how sometimes showing up for someone outside of ourselves is a gift as well.
Yeah, I mean, depression, no one's going to like this line, but please take it with a grain of salt. But it's by its very nature, it is self-absorbed. So there's me, myself, and I. And the three of us are now, I honor deep inner work. You're in your bed and you stay there for 2 days and you need to just like nurture and cry and whatever happened. That is real. But when you're talking about that season where you are ready to, and even before you're ready, pre-ready to get up and out, service has been a lifesaver. For me, it has literally saved my life. And it allows you to let the people in when you're in your darkest moments. They're like, there's nowhere I'd rather be. It also reminds you that you're not alone, because isolation is best friends with addiction. Isolation and addiction, especially towards the end, they just love telling each other that this is the best it can be. And this is the absolute totality of what it is that you deserve. And that cannot thrive in community and exposure, right? Mm-hmm. And so it also helps us when we're isolated or self-isolating, to draw ourselves out and even just step out for a walk and step into community and in any way reach out to others. I always say checking in on my friends is my favorite hobby. And I hope that that's on my gravestone, because, it's like, but it's helped me. It's,
your pain has become a piece of your purpose is
100%
checking in on those people. I want to talk about your sobriety and what led you there. Why did you decide to get sober?
I don't know if I decided. I kind of needed to. It's like I went to this dinner party once about a year before I got sober, and all of these angels had just kept planting little seeds in me, kind of like, hey, And I sat beside this girl, and I was drinking at a dinner, and she wasn't. And I said, "Why aren't you having a drink?" And she goes, "Oh, it was time for me to retire." And she just starts laughing, and I was like, oh yeah, I was like, oh, that's me. And people kept expressing different stories. And I was like, that's me, you know? And like a lot of women, my drinking increased when I had children. I binge drank and in a very isolated kind of way. And that's super common statistically just for women as a way of drinking. And which I find very interesting, like what's hidden in domestic life and all of the themes around privacy and shame and so forth. But for me, it was like I'd climbed halfway up a mountain. I could absolutely see how I could still keep carrying the heaviness of this thing with me. But there was a sense of like, oh, if you want to see the top, you got to put this down. Like there's no way you're getting all the way up there with carrying this.
And this being the drinking,
Alcohol.
the shame that was associated with it, the baggage, the heaviness
of that. I have a lot of attributes that perfectly set me up for this. And, you know, I've heard this said before, which is take away my medicine and you will see my disease. And so it's like, when that substance is, even after getting sober, it's like I have ways that I am wired, you know, from my DNA, from the way I was brought up, from trauma, like whatever it is that are like in me. And I'm not saying these things. I've seen radical change amongst myself, my peers, you know, friends that have gotten sober. I've walked with a lot of people in their journeys in sobriety, and I've seen radical change that, you know, you might never think was possible. You know, yeah, it got really dark to the point that I was sick and tired of myself. And I knew that I was destined for more. And I specifically knew that I had a strong spiritual relationship that I could access when I was sober, and that I would never be able to be in a position of spiritual leadership or be an example spiritually to people in full authenticity unless I got sober. And I started to hate the hypocrisy of myself. Mm-hmm. I would go to things and I would say, this is the best time ever. Or I'd get some special occasion in New York or some accolade or something. And then I would drink and wake up, you know, not knowing where I was, like, you know, just scared. Part of it was really reckless and dangerous. And I think compassionately, I would say that part of that is a bit of a like, you know, kind of like, you know,
she's fingering the cameras if you're listening to this.
Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, you can swear.
That's the only word that really applies, which is like, fuck it all. Like, I wanted to have a place where I could come undone and show everyone that I didn't have it all together. I was secretly suffering and wanted that to be kept a secret. And so the pain between wanting to have my insides match my outsides and wanting to reveal myself to people, it was like, love me, love me, love me, see me, see me, see me. Please don't see me. I want to escape and shut this all off. The pain between those two places started to become so unbearable. The other thing that happened right before I quit was that I read for a year. I kept drinking, but I started to read books and blogs, specifically Laura McCohen and Holly Whitaker, who introduced the entire world to contemporary language outside of the AA program around drinking and addiction, and specifically women and alcohol. And I read another book by Ann Dowsett Johnson. I read a number of books, This Naked Mind, etc. And through reading, I was able to privately access what I had previously always suspected I was.
Which was? What did you suspect?
An alcoholic.
You were an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Would your friends at that time have said that you were an alcoholic, or would your drinking have just appeared, quote unquote, normal?
They wouldn't be so brash, you know, is that the right word? Yeah. Brash as to diagnose me or pass judgment. When I made amends to some of them, one of them, specifically my best childhood friend, said to me, I'm so sorry that we didn't reach out, that we didn't know that you were suffering that much. So would they have known? Yes, absolutely. And also no, I think is sort of it was shrouded in this sort of push-pull also of our age, right? In your 20s, it's kind of normal. In your 30s, whatever, like you can just stop getting away with it at a certain age. And there was a couple of things I did. It never touched my professional life, and I wasn't a day drinker. And there was a couple of times where it did touch my professional life, which really made me feel very exposed. Yeah. And I got really serious about not wanting to lose what I had built, because my integrity in my brand, and the integrity of my brand actually is me and my integrity. And I had spent 15 years building that, and I didn't want to lose it. And so that got real serious real quick.
Wow. I love what you said before, which is there was a part of me that just knew I was meant for more. And this is, at the beginning of the trailer of the podcast episode for women who know that they are meant for more. But yet I feel like often women say this almost like whispering it and turning their head a little bit, like they're ashamed to have believed at some point that they were meant for more. And yet I'm fascinated by this because I also have that same sense, that same whispering. What do you think that is? Is it ego? Is it just us as human beings wanting to grasp to the fact that our lives matter? Is it a deep knowing that we are not fully showing up as our most expansive, authentic self?
I think it's deeply complex. It again has to go back a little bit. If you were born into a world where you were from a lineage of midwives and everyone around you said that your calling was to be midwife, and you deeply felt in your soul that midwifery was your calling, like stepping into a river, you could just step right into what it was that you felt both called to do and supported to do by your community. And the naturalness with which you would feel that inner calling and the outer support of that calling would be so natural that you would just, step into it, learn, study under whoever, and then live your calling. And it would be supported by the natural nature of the natural world. So we live in a complex world that's lots of cement and, we live in cities, most of us. So we've got this complexity of that. And I think more importantly, we don't really understand how new being a woman in business or working or supporting anyone or being a single mother in the blah, 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 or not being the property of their husband and not, there's so many things that I don't think we really clearly understand. It's a little bit like someone spun your shoulders around and then said, Erin, step out. Aren't you lucky? Go ahead, do everything. And you're a bit like, wait. Why are we feeling this tension between what we're called and meant to do, and then this like these things that sort of feel like they're complexities that keep us small? And I think we need to remember that like our grandmothers didn't have access to contraception. And then every woman before her ever didn't have access to contraception. So that means that we are the first daughters of the daughters. We really are, our mothers were kind of able to go to work. Women right now, I think, are feeling this burst of energy, this knowingness, this like richness, this juiciness, this aliveness, and this like, wait a minute. And then this really strong tension and complexities around actually getting to actualize that.
Right. Ooh, I love that entire analogy that you just gave. And it really helps me feel so much more understanding around, like, also, what if you're born into a family that is a forest family and you're like, wait, I'm meant to be a water baby in the ocean. There are societal structures in place. And even if your family loves, adores you, and supports you, you still have to figure out how to get out of the forest, how to swim, and all of these various things. I really do truly believe that our soul can have a calling, and like flowers in a garden, it's almost like you're growing into your own unique flower and version. And we need the things around us that are going to help support us in becoming that fullest expression of ourself. And we're going to have different obstacles along the way that support us or hold us back.
And I think the important piece is covering that whole process in a lot of compassion. A lot of self-compassion. So long as you and I call each other and we remind each other that we're new to this.
Right.
Oh, okay. We got time.
Lifetime.
Yeah, lifetime. And, then we can kind of take that pressure. The pressure cooker that, if we co-participate in the pressure cooker, and I say co-participate a little bit on purpose, because I do hear, for me, and I think women talk out of both sides of their mouths. I want this, but I'm unwilling to do this.
Yes.
We had to get a bigger house.
Right.
It's just an interesting sentence. Had to said who? Had to said, and there's some things that we have to do. But a lot of things when we're talking out of both sides of our mouths, I think that we have to look at the places where we're co-participating in the pressures that we claim to have that are imposed upon us, which maybe aren't.
Circling back to your sobriety journey and what we were initially talking about, your creativity, your life's work, how has sobriety impacted your creativity, how you show up as an entrepreneur, and these other various aspects of your life?
Well, for anyone who is not an alcoholic and or is listening and is going, well, what does sobriety have to do with me? I think I'll answer that question in a way that's like, sobriety is, to me, looking at something clearly. So a good example is I open my bank account and I don't see any savings in there. And I think to myself, wait a minute, like, this is my ex-husband's fault. Or this is who didn't put anything in here. I say, and I think it's a really sobering moment. I go, oh, wait. And in sobriety from alcohol, but I got rid of alcohol 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So on day 2, I was like, or whatever, let's say the first year it had to get out of my system. Well, so I've had 8 years of being sober, but like, there's no substance anymore.
Yeah.
So the sobriety work is around, okay, wait a minute. There's no savings in the savings account. I have to, in my sobriety, look at that with clear eyes. And so the answer to that question is that sobriety, being real with what is, being present to what is, getting okay with what is, even if it's uncomfortable, is a process of like, only through a clearer vessel am I going to do better work, be more real with my finances, be more present to my children, be more able to be there for my friends, etc. So it's like that work has really like helped clear out this vessel, and I mean, getting rid of the substance was just the beginning.
What have been the most surprising parts about sobriety?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sober sex is really interesting.
Say more.
A lot of people don't even realize how inebriated they are during the dating process or during the process of having sex, even with their long-term love of their life. Excuse me. And there's a level of presence and awareness that at times can be quite confronting and uncomfortable. And so even walking other partners through that and walking with them through sober sex, sometimes for the first times, can be really beautiful. There's not a lot of instruction around sober sex and the newness of that, and the fumbling around and the sort of like vulnerability that presents. Because oftentimes, even when people aren't addicted, they're using any substance, alcohol most commonly, as a companion. And so it's like almost like there's this sort of comfort to it. There's this camaraderie, friendship. You think of a guy having a beer maybe, but also like 3 glasses of wine and bringing that drunkenness into the bedroom and having that be the reason that you feel comfortable to do whatever is a really new thing for a lot of people to be in and to stay present in. It's one thing to get sober and it's another thing to stay sober. And it's the same thing with making love. It's like, it's one thing to try something a couple times, but to really stay in that longer term has been a really fascinating and revealing process.
In this process of being sober for 9 years now, like, what have you learned about yourself?
Well, everything that you suspected was already in there. Whether you were drinking to sort of like suppress it or keep, all the anxieties were there. all of everything is still alive, if not more. Oh, it's got more space. Oh, it's got more airtime. It's got more, and there's a lot of grief in that. I'll give you an example. I was identified as a gifted child at a certain age, but I was never identified that I was also highly sensitive or highly creative. And so, yes, I was raised in a house where they're like, there's infinite crayons, and yes, go to art school. And so, like, some of those things were functionally supported around me. The real honoring of how, like, deeply feeling I really am, like, how that has been a later in life, slower to sort of, there's been a lot of defrosting that has had to happen, and a lot of, like, putting up my hand, with certain friends or in the safety of certain relationships or certain conversations, and be like, that's a huge part of me. Also, even just the heart space in general. For example, my friend Fiona, I mentioned this at during my 9 years sobriety sort of like party. It was like she was there, and I mentioned that she would say to me, like, you have a huge heart. And I do, but I never sort of got raised in a it was like, how do I bring that forward as, like, the leader? Like, that goes first. Like, my heart goes first, and everyone can see it. And it's not just because, if you take, for example, being gifted and highly functional and highly able and highly do, go, tallest, best at sports, eldest daughter, there's like a ton of pressure on that. And it's taken a long time for me to acknowledge the subtleties within and make peace with them, but also make peace with the ways in which they weren't acknowledged or revealed throughout not just my childhood, and no blame, but just like, how can I bring those forward now with more courage at this age and lead from that place and continue to nurture my own safety around what that's going to continue to feel like. And the living legacy that I get to embody so that other people get to do that too is one of the great mysteries of having gotten sober that I get to do now.
That brought up emotion for you, talking about just not being seen, that part of you not being seen, the heart-led part. Why do you think that brings up emotion?
It's so moving to be able to be yourself. I'm so touched that I walk under the grace of getting to have gotten sober. For what reason did I get chosen? For what reason did I? And I can hear people saying, well, you worked at it and you read books and you did this. And it's like, yeah, I've seen a lot of people really struggle and they just didn't get to get it. It's not that they didn't get it. They didn't get to get it for some reason. And I walk under a lot of mercy, a lot of grace, and a lot of, like, bad things could have happened. Like, if I really take inventory of what happened, it's like, I feel very fortunate.
It sounds to me when you talk that you have some sort of connection to something greater than. Like you said, I feel like I'm a vessel for the artwork that comes through me, for the creativity that is expressed. I feel as if I was chosen or given this gift of sobriety. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with spirituality.
HP?
Your HP, your higher
person.
power.
My higher power. Yeah, I mean, I've had a strong relationship with my higher power since day one. Specifically, it's sort of like a coming of age around 12, 13. It's like I had really strong, like, liberal, left-wing, kumbaya, groovy kind of Jesus type roots of Christian families that, my extended family was all of service. The historic Jesus came nomadic and poor to be of service, and his only commandment actually was to love. And so that's not religious. That's just like the way I was raised. I was in this, like, yes, church at the time, and then it's sort of morphed into this deep spirituality that's been the ongoing rudder of my entire life. And so it's like, for me, it's everything. It's I can't even, it'd be like, what's it like living without air? Like, I literally have no idea. Has it at times felt further away, my spiritual life, and then at times extremely close, of course. But it's been it's always been there. I've always had like an insatiable appetite, and not in a manic sense. Like I really do I love Alan Watts. I don't know if he was specifically referring to like hipsters going on multiple ayahuasca journeys, but yeah, he says, once you get the message, you can hang up the phone. So like, I do understand that there's benevolent powers greater than us, and this whole thing. How could you even create? You can meditate on one flower, and you know that you could never create that. You don't even know how it was made. You can be the biggest biologist in the world, but you can't really even ever understand how that one thing was made. And we live in this insanely creative natural world that is beyond comprehension. So I love the companionship of having a friendship with my higher power and someone with whom I can console myself. I'm never alone. I can say when I'm in the darkest place, I'm alone. I feel alone. And the voice whispers, I'm here in the stillness, in the quietness. Like, so it breaks the mythology, it breaks the myth, it breaks that, like, again, it ruptures and interrupts the lie that I am isolated.
Love that.
Yeah.
If somebody's listening right now and they are like, Zoe, you're speaking to me, I feel like I am meant for more. I feel like I'm climbing up that mountain with a heavy pack and I need to let it go. Where would you recommend that they start?
First of all, they can just DM me or call me or email me. A lot of people do. So sometimes I'm the only sober person that people know. I always ask them to think if they maybe know somebody who's already sober in their community. So if you live in an isolated community and your funky aunt down the street's been going to AA for 20 years, you just give her a call.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm ready, or I'm broken, or whatever you want to say. I'm a hot mess. Come pick me up. Help. Yeah, help. You just say help. Yeah. You just kind of put your hand up, right? And you kind of wave the white flag. So I always just say, tell one person that you really, really trust. And that can be your best friend or your aunt or whoever it is. And then further that, there's lots of free programs in our, society that are only like one Google or one phone call away. There's a lot more support than we think.
So start by reaching out. You also mentioned in your own journey reading books, which I will link to all of the ones that Zoe recommended, if that feels like a safer starting point. There's so many books and podcasts and blogs now that start to dip into this stuff as well. So
yeah, and just don't stay there for too long though, because I was in a conversation with someone yesterday. She said, well, I'm going to wait. Well, I'm going to, do this. And we've been talking on and off for about 6 months. And you don't want to wait until you meet a certain type of rock bottom that might wake you up to how serious things are. So it's also about just kind of just calling someone and saying, I'm ready, or I'm hurting, or it's time. I think the thing is that people say, did you know? And I say, oh yeah, of course. Of course I knew. People say, well, how will I know? Yeah. Have you ever Googled, am I an alcoholic? Okay, well, like
there are signs.
Yeah, it's like, and that's not for, and maybe that was just from a night of, after a concert, but, it's.
Yeah. What would you say for somebody listening right now who's Googling or ChatGPTing, am I an alcoholic? If you were to say right now, like, what are some signs that you might consider taking a break from alcohol?
Yeah, so it's funny because I hesitate to answer that question, even though it's one of the most important questions, because it's it's not, as one, I think you have an innate knowing, you already know. Two, like I said, there's a spectrum of use, abuse, and dependency in different seasons in your life. And one of the things I would say is that it depends on how much real estate it's taking up in your life. That's a really good way of measuring. So are you thinking about, can I go to Anna's wedding? Do I have to be the designated driver? Can I afford an Uber there? Will I be having spritzers before? Oh, if all the girls are drinking, are they going to finish the champagne? How will we, when we have a half a bottle of champagne in the house, do you go and chug it at night? This is actually, I love this. This answers your question sort of. For other people who drink normally, there are people who have half a glass of wine or one glass of wine. And, we look at them and we're like, wow, that was amazing. Erin just had half a glass of wine at the party, and we're kind of going up the table at the wedding, like chugging or whatever you didn't find. Whatever, fine, in the bathroom. So there's, there has to be some dark humor around it. But the thing is that for a normal drinker, they open their fridge and they have a bottle of mustard. And they don't have a relationship with a bottle of mustard. They just look at it. It has no charge to it. It doesn't take up real estate in their mind. They have no friendship with it. It has it. They put it away. They use it twice a year. They put it away. It's just for hot dogs.
Yes.
It has no charge. And most importantly, it takes up no space in their life. And there are people for whom alcohol is like that. Oh, there's a bottle of wine in the fridge. There's a bottle of mustard. It's like potato. Take it or leave it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't need it.
So for us, for those of us who self-identify, and I'll say something about that word that's really important to me because I have friends who are sober and don't use that word. And I think it's really important that language liberates us. I use that word because it sets me free. I feel a lot of liberation in identifying and being like, that's almost exciting to me in some weird warped way because I'm like a part of a group. I'm part of a club. I'm part of
being sober or being an alcoholic.
Being an alcoholic.
Right. Yeah. So for some people that will be
the language
that doesn't
that doesn't resonate, which is fine. Like do not wear language like as a ball and chain. There has to be liberation in the language and around the language that is exciting and life-giving. Like I quit drinking so that I could have a life, not so that I could be condemned through like past, actions and sort of continue to have to carry that around as a heaviness.
I love that. What does it mean for you to be well within?
For me, what comes to mind immediately is that the inside matches the outside and that the interfacing of my own self, my soul, my heart, my intellect, my experiences, that I'm able to interface with the world. So meaning that there's like a seamless relationship here. I'll give you an example. Its opposite is when something is tucked so far away, or there's so much anxiety, or there's too much noise up here, or I cannot interface this experience, this human experiences, and all of the joys and pleasures that I want to bring and ingest them. I can't if I'm not well within. And again, sort of like getting to be an expression of that on the outside, but from a centered, internal, non-negotiable, peaceful place. This is the result of getting to be well within, that equanimity, that all of the expressions of that get to come from.
You mentioned sobriety, but do you have any other tools or practices that really support you in feeling well within?
Yeah, I think my philosophy around that is pretty liberal in the sense of I'm not a super disciplined. I mean, it's funny, what would people define as discipline? I get up every day at 5 naturally because I'm like mostly neurotic and anxious. So people are like, they revere me. They're like, wow, you are such a...
You're like, no, my cortisol just shoots
through the roof. Yeah. And I'm like, holy shit, I gotta go. So like, yeah, I'm a neurotic, insane person who has like a flock of birds in her head and a bunch of squirrels in her center. So yes, yay. So that's not, I get up really early. I do all my practices in the morning, and it's a bit of a hodgepodge situation. But one of the things that I would say about that is it really matters the season. So the season, yes, of the external sort of summer, spring, winter, fall, those matter. And also the season that you're in. So for example, last fall, I had experienced a really sad breakup, and I was still 6 months later, whatever it was, I was like still in so much grief. So I dragged my sorry ass down to the ocean. I went in the ocean 30 days in a row, over 40 days. So not a 30 out of 30 days, but a 30 out of 40. So I let a lot of gentleness and sort of fluidity around that. It wasn't like, I haven't done my plunge. That's not who I am. And it will never be who I am. I let the water heal me. So the cold water and I would go for a swim. And I was in relationship with that during that season of my life. And I handed my grief to the water. I don't need that today. Mm-hmm. I'm good. So, but I'm good in a different way. I got to run because I'm crazy, or I got to, I need friendship because, so I run with Vic and work out with Vic I need someone to show up at my door. I'm just like, that's how I'm wired, and or to sign up for a class. So I think there's some things that you know about yourself that are consistent. Those things are likely going to remain pretty true. Am I really going to do workouts by myself if I move to the middle of nowhere? So I need accountability, and I put things in my calendar. I keep appointments with my wellness and with myself in my calendar in the same way I would keep my appointment with being here with you. And I'm open to the things changing and trying different stuff.
So movement, sobriety, setting and blocking off time for yourself. You have your morning rituals and routines. You mentioned for your art, you're doing some writing.
Yeah. I do writing every day.
You do writing every day.
Yeah.
In a journal?
Yeah.
Blank page, just whatever comes out?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
So you have so many tools and so many practices and so many ways of checking on the inner world and self-reflecting.
But I would also say, more importantly than that, I would say they're forms of expression. Like, to me, it's not like putting things in, it's like getting them out. And so if I am prone to depression, then I need to be expressing. I have to use its opposite. Opposites are the alchemy. And so if I'm prone to staying slow and low, I got to get up and move, because I have to be real with myself about like what's not working and move through that.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about depression, anxiety, and there's a real theme in this conversation around expression through creativity, through movement, through journaling, through art, through advocacy work, through service to others. Yeah. And it's a real light bulb moment for me that the work within, creating that peace within, that wellness within, it's not just about, meditating to a point of calm, but it is expressing yourself in every way, shape, and form, through every different season, through every different mood and emotion, and finding the portals or the ways in which to do that.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a couple of things, which is through the messy middle, right? So I'm expressing myself still through the messy middle. In my darkest times, I didn't call people with a TED Talk or a solution. I just called, and sometimes I'd be silent on the phone. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know how to say help. The maturity, the growth in the last couple of years has been, and also in these in-between times, in liminal spaces where I'm bored and I don't know what to do. Right now, I'm making a lot of different changes at work, and people are like, well, where are you going? And like, what is happening? You're going to lead retreats. Well, where are they going to be? And it's like, you're going to get a property. Well, where? I have no idea. Like, my higher power and I are on like some crazy magical carpet ride, and I'm like, kumbaya. I don't really know what's going to happen. I have no spreadsheet, but I'm making peace with being in those liminal spaces and being okay there. And the more that I'm able to be okay with discomfort, the more I'm able to have the inside meet the outside world meets me. I put it back into the well within, and I kind of am able to be like a medicine woman and alchemize these very complex situations and be okay with like riding the waves of that, and not solving and not fixing and not planning and not like using control as an antidote to fear, and then getting so wound up that I make myself sick, essentially.
Yeah. It's really about like floating with your higher power, floating with the force of the universe, and knowing that you will become a magnet to what you are meant to have, and probably something even bigger or greater than you could even possibly imagine for yourself.
You also have to be incredibly uncomfortable with being a bit weird.
Because I'm having a hard time with that part.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a simple story. People are like, what did you do this summer? And I'll say, hello. I worked my ass off in July. I had like the tiniest bit of money. I put it in my bank account on August 1st. And then on August 1st, I kind of spent the majority of August like on my couch feeling anxiety and like strangely crying and like doing these, just like eating chips at my counter and like journaling, or, like not putting anything into a Google, not really knowing, but really just kind of also absorbing the enormity of all of the terrible and complex things that had happened to me over the last 5 years. Okay. Well, when someone says September 1st,
How was your August?
Yes.
Erin, how are you?
Yeah. And the other thing people want is they want to know a destination. It's a leading question. They have a question under the question, which is, well, how are you getting? When are you getting there? Yeah. They're worried on your behalf in advance because they're so insecure with liminal spaces or with like these kind of time gaps or like not knowing, and they already think it's freaky that you do, you make a living out of, I make a living out of feeling feelings, smushing paint somewhere, inventing things, rubbing it around, putting a fancy price tag on it,
giving it a name,
giving it a strange title that you can't really understand, but I kind of want you to. And then I sort of like put it on Instagram. I put myself beside it in sort of like a blow-dried something outfit, and then I go to a gala, and then I ask you to swipe your Visa, maybe.
Yes.
That's how I make a living. So it's a really abstract to most people.
It is.
And they're like, sorry, and you want to make that further weird? And you're like, yes, I do. I'd like to add in this curveball.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we like tidy endings. We like closed circles and loops. And what you're saying is you can't always be that or give people that. But it also gives people permission to be in their own messy middle, unfinished business.
Well, and like on the way to fame and success, I don't know who said this, probably Gary Vee or something, but like there's on the way to fame and success, there's a lot of cringe on the way.
Yes.
It is a bit like, oh God, the things we really want to do. It's like, oh, I'd really love to write a song, but I don't know. That sounds scary and
cringeworthy.
Cringe.
But that's part, you're on your way if you're doing something that's making you cringe.
A little bit. Or as David Bowie would say, yeah, you've kind of stepped out into the pool and your little feet are like you're a little bit out of your depth, right? And everybody's like reveres it from the outside. But the internal lived experience of that person, the human that's within that experience of being courageous or being a little bit out beyond their depth financially, emotionally, spiritually. For those of us who are pioneers in those ways, it's like the internal lived experience can oftentimes be very, very painful or just anxious in general. And so, yeah, we have to take extra special care to tend to ourselves when we're doing stuff that's new.
I have taken so much from this conversation, so many aha moments, so many things that I'm just going to let roll around in my mind. I feel very seen in the things that you shared. So thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. For all of us, like to be seen is to be loved. And I've received a lot of it too from people like yourself. And it's a real pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about these cards that are sitting here.
Oh my gosh. I created an oracle deck. It's a 40-card deck made out of my top 40 favorite paintings of my entire career, manifested in my 40th year. And we released it a couple of years ago. And it includes a booklet which has an expanded meaning around each card. And they're available for sale online, anywhere you can find me. But people have been using them in such a myriad of ways, which I've loved seeing them unfold. And so they all include a journal prompt.
I love this as a tool for communicating with somebody that you love or for journaling. Should we both pick one right now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. You would normally shuffle the cards and you can pick.
Okay. Look at this beautiful.
Oh, compassion.
Yeah, compassion.
Wow.
And your cards?
Timing.
Does that one feel right for you?
Yeah. Timing and compassion. I mean, they always work,
The journal prompt for compassion: where am I judgmental and where can I apply a lens of compassion in order to be more loving? Love that. And timing: where can I stop rushing my journey and surrender to the bigger plan?
And we've got the moon waxing and waning over the character's head. It's called Vessels and Muses because it includes all of my figurative work.
Yeah.
And then the vessel work as well.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. You are incredible. Where can everybody find you? Where can they see your art and learn more about you?
Everything can be looked up at my full name, Zoë Pawlak, Pawlak. Everything, my Instagram is my full name and zoepawlak.com.
We will link to it down below. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful day. We'll see you in the same place next week.